So here's the podcast overview of the objectives for Chapter 6, Health-Related Behavior and Health Promotion. So in this chapter, you're going to be looking at the differences between health behaviors, well behavior, symptom-based behavior, and sick role behavior. These are just different variations of how we might see individuals act or adapt or adopt different roles that they play when sick or when well, right? So understanding these minute differences helps us to better conceptualize behavior as a whole when it relates to our health. So there's specific things people do that are considered health behaviors, as well as well behaviors. Well behaviors, we could typically think of things that are preventative in nature, whereas symptom-based behaviors are once someone's feeling ill, maybe already starting to have symptoms, what might they do? What might their behaviors be? And then sick role behavior. Once we are officially quote unquote sick, deemed sick by a doctor or those around us, what kinds of behaviors do we adopt? And then understanding how health behaviors differ in individuals due to demographic variables. So, how I act in my health behaviors might not be how someone else acts. It might depend on where we live, how educated we are, what we do in our day-to-day life, whether I'm a female or a male, whether or not I have a high SES status or low SES status. All of those kinds of things can affect our health behaviors. We'll then look at the various measures taken to prevent disease and improve treatment. And this is really kind of like a pivotal point in health psychology. This is where things are turning, have been turning for quite a while, and that is towards a focus on prevention of disease. Right now, the biggest killers that are destroying us on the health front are largely preventable diseases due to diet and exercise related behaviors. Obesity is rampant in our country. We are the highest in the amount of obese individuals out of all countries in the world. And this is taking its toll on us via diabetes and heart disease and stroke, cancers, numerous different illnesses that we're going to be looking at later on in the semester. We'll look individually at a lot of those. But right here is where you start getting a sense of how our behaviors contribute to those kinds of diseases, how we can actually prevent getting heart disease. We can prevent diabetes. Many times we can prevent a stroke. Many times we can prevent various kinds of cancer. Lung cancer is still the number one type of cancer that is killing individuals today, and it's due to our smoking habits, which hasn't gone away with the advent of e-cigarettes. So it's these kinds of things that we're going to take a look at. How do we prevent that? How do we deal with that as a society? You'll also come to be more familiar with the different phases of prevention, which are primary, secondary, and tertiary. Those are just different stages in the preventative sort of scope of things that a person could fall into as they're trying to maybe curb bad behavior that is not healthy, or trying to target good behavior that is healthy. There are different phases that we would fall into, depending upon where we lie on that spectrum. Looking at some of the issues surrounding the promotion of wellness. Why is it so hard in America in particular to promote wellness? Why is it so hard to get people to take good care of themselves? What are the different factors? There's factors that are based on the person, the individual that we have to target, factors that are based in how we relate to one another, sort of the interpersonal side of things, and then community related. So in our society, in our culture, in our neighborhoods, in our schools, and in our family dynamics. So all of those are considered sort of the different prongs of promoting wellness. And in order to do a good job of promoting wellness, we really have to be targeting all of those areas. Then understanding the role of learning in health-related behavior. So this is where we look at things from probably that you had in intro psych, such as operant conditioning and classical conditioning and modeling. These are the primary modes of learning that take place in individuals. We learn by watching others. We learn by associating things with one another, one thing with another thing. We learn through rewards and punishment. What are we rewarded for in our society? What are we punished for? What's looked down on? What's glamorized? All of those things are going to affect how we act in a health sense. Then looking at the role of personality in influencing health behavior. And I think that you guys are getting a very good snapshot of that primarily through the longevity chapter. So here's where you could have some intersection. The longevity book, there's a lot of intersection here because the longevity project is all about the different things about a person, much of it related to personality and how it affects our health decision making, our health behaviors, and so forth, and relates to how long we live, right? So the role of personality in health-related behaviors. Also know the cognitive factors that impact health-related behaviors. When we say cognitive factors, this is how do we think about our health? How do our thoughts drive our behaviors? And they much so do. What we think often leads to what we do. Sometimes we do before we think, but we often think before we do. And it's this kind of thing that can affect good or bad decision making. Be familiar with the phases and the implications of what's called the health belief model, the theory of planned behavior, and the stages of change model, also sometimes known as the trans-theoretical model. These are 3 models where you're going to want to map them out. They have different parts. Each one is used to explain how a person approaches health, right? How does one conceptualize themselves in a health relevant sense? If somebody is trying to tackle or take on changing a behavior, like I want to stop smoking or I want to start eating better, what would that look like? What would the different steps be that they might move through in an effort to do that? Maybe a doctor told them that they needed to. Maybe they had a health scare and realized they needed to. And so what would be the steps of that happening? And so these models are just a little, each one is a little variation of the other. There isn't one right model. In fact, in healthcare, we use all of these models sort of simultaneously sometimes to understand individuals. These models are used as a driving force behind a lot of our health promotion efforts. How do we go out there and promote for a campaign for people to eat healthier? What would work? I mean, if we don't know what people's behaviors are, and we don't know what the reasons for their behaviors are, then we do a pretty bad job of trying to target those behaviors. So these models are an effort to try to understand human behavior when it comes to health behavior change. Explain some of the motivational factors and the beliefs that people have about their health, including false hope, emotional factors, and conflict theory models. So people have a variety of motivations for engaging in the acts that they do. Some of that is cultural, some of it is environmentally just learned through patterns of behavior. Again, classical conditioning plays a role here, and operant conditioning plays a role here, but be able to outline what some of those different motivational factors are in that sort of umbrella. And then the various stages of development and how health-related behaviors differ depending upon what stage of development you're in. What are the key kind of health behaviors that we look at in infancy versus early childhood versus young adulthood and maybe older adults, aging population. Explain the sociocultural factors in health, such as social class and diverse populations. Not all individuals are created equal, unfortunately. In terms of we live in different places, we have different health behaviors and beliefs that contribute to our health. And so when we look at things in a sociocultural sense, what we're doing is we're zoning in on the differences, right, amongst us. We're different in a sense that, we might eat differently depending upon what our background is or where we're from. We might engage in different activities depending upon where we're from. And so all of that stuff is going to relate to how one carries themselves in terms of their health. And then also knowing about the various methods and modes for promoting health in the community. And what kinds of tactics work for health promotion. And then specifically amongst healthcare professionals, how do they go about promoting health? And a lot of it's done through motivational interviewing. This is what's been found through research to work really well with patients in a doctor-patient scenario. Normally it is that doctor visit that turns the light on for most people in understanding that they're maybe engaging in very unhealthy behaviors. They go into the doctor and they get a checkup and their blood pressure is high, or they're smoking a lot and their lungs are compromised, or they're overweight, or they're obese. And so these are the types of things that doctors would zone in on. They usually run a panel of tests, testing out how your blood's flowing, what your sugar levels look like, what the amounts of triglycerides are in your blood. And so all of these things, come back with a result. And the result often for many patients is that their levels are high, right? Too much sugar, they're pre-diabetic or diabetic, too much salt in the diet, they're having hypertension, high blood pressure, can't breathe very easily, or having a lot of stress maybe in their life, and it's exacerbating underlying illnesses like asthma and such. So it's usually that doctor visit that, for most people is like, wow, I got to change my behaviors, or I got to do something different, or my doctor says I need to fix my diet, or I need to exercise more. So understanding how doctors go about that through motivational interviewing. And then describing what kinds of difficulties exist for patients in maintaining healthy behaviors. Why is it so hard for patients to be healthy? Is it that they don't want to, or that they don't know how to, or that maybe the environment doesn't allow them to, or doesn't help them in the process? And finally, the role that schools, religious organizations, the workplace, and the community all play in promoting and maintaining health. So it really is all of these different aspects in our lives. This is the sociocultural view that plays such a huge role in whether or not we are healthy.